It's just really what we want to sing about, you know. You could go rent a movie at a rental place with the most graphic horror right there, but all this stuff is coming down on us, we just do it for fun. It's what we want to do.
Today we are ranking the albums of Exodus, starting with Bonded by Blood in 1985. Definitely a classic album and among my favorites from the band overall. The opening title track is also one of my favorite thrash openers of all time. It's the only full-length studio album with Paul Baloff on vocals, and he just makes such weird choices in how the words are delivered. Definitely an approach I would call a bit of an acquired taste. Also love A Lesson in Violence, which, fun fact, was the original album title.
The pleasure of watching you die is what I will get.
And as long as we were talking trivia, another song called Impaler was meant to be included, but their original guitarist Kirk Hammett took those riffs with him to Metallica, which ultimately became Trapped Under Ice, but more on that a little bit later. Very fun album and highly influential. I'm putting it at perfection. People seem to be pretty split on this album, whether they love it or hate it. But moving on, we have Pleasures of the Flesh in 1987. Steve Souza taking on vocals for the first time here for what I consider to be a highly underrated sophomore record. I see many people either choose Bonded by Blood or Fabulous Disaster, which are great records, but frankly, I think that this is my favorite from start to finish. Deranged makes for a nice crusty opener with those great ascending and descending hooks, which is then contrasted nicely by the more mid-paced chugs and dark atmosphere of Till Death Do Us Part. Parasite is very catchy. Faster Than You'll Ever Live to Be is a mouthful of a title, but a straight rager of a track. Great variety of riffs in general to keep things interesting. This one also went to perfection. Then we get Fabulous Disaster in 1989. Another legendary album in this band's discography. The Last Act of Defiance is a solid opener with the sick D-beats and great gang vocals on the chorus, but Fabulous Disaster has that amazing bass and one of the most earworm thrash choruses of all time in general. The Toxic Waltz is another one of my all-time favorite Exodus songs. Corruption is a fun head bobber, and Verbal Razors has the really infectious, bluesy, almost Pantera-esque twist. After that, though, I have to admit, it kind of falls off for me. I don't love Cajun Hell or Like Father, Like Son, and I could definitely do without the Lowrider cover, which is a song I already hate in general, but they make it even cornier somehow. It rallies a bit for the last few songs, but honestly, I don't think it's nearly as strong as the last two. Even I'm surprised putting this classic at a kind of lower tier here, but that just shows how steep the competition was on this particular list. It is going to amazing. And as always, guys, this is metal. This is meant to be like people sharing their genuine opinions, not just being sheep and all listing the same rankings. That would be super boring. It defeats the purpose of even making a video like this if we all think the same.
People will think what I tell them to think when you tell me what to tell them to think.
So by all means, put your own rankings down in the comments. Where do we agree? Where do we disagree? And if you're enjoying yourself so far, hit the like button. And if you hate me, hit the dislike button. I love it either way. But moving on, we have Impact Is Imminent in 1990. The first album through Capitol Records and with John Tempesta of The Cult on drums. This album is far from terrible, and believe me, I've listened to some truly abysmal stuff, but this is definitely several steps down, and also where Steve's vocals start to get on my nerves a lot more. The title track is good. I enjoy the bouncy, headbanging vibes of AWOL, plenty of fun riffs too. I think part of the problem is that much like other thrash bands in the 90s, they slowed things down a lot, and then you just have straight up weaker tracks like Within the Walls of Chaos, which unfortunately is also the longest song. The album was not well received, even holding just 1.5 stars from AllMusic, and it's their second lowest fan-rated album on Metal Storm, but still made Billboard at 137. Gary Holt named this album one he wishes he could redo, and even cited the title track as having the best riff he had ever written, though. I am putting this one at okay. I see some defenders out there. Again, sound off in the comments.
Oh, I can. And I will.
But then we got Force of Habit in 1992.
I know that you never gave me a chance to prove myself.
So this is the lowest fan-rated album on Metal Storm with a piddling 6.9, which is over half a score lower than Impact. Continuing their transition into more of a groove metal sound, but with some progressive influences as well on the longer tracks. But really, right from opener Thorn in My Side, the term that really comes to mind is butt rock, and unfortunately strap in for a lot more of that because this shit sandwich is over 68 minutes long. And in this case, I hope to share it so that you don't have to torture yourself like I did.
Hey, that really sucked!
There are still some solid riffs like on the opening of Me, Myself, and I, and some good bass parts too, but not a single song I would really point to as good overall. I'll try to give them some credit for incorporating new sounds like the brass instruments on Bitch, but it all just comes off as a much lamer version of Van Halen to me. I'll at least say it's far from the worst 90s album from a legacy thrash band, but it's still a slog, and it's bad enough that I am going to actually add a tier here for bad. For this album specifically, it's going to bad.
I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Moving on, we have Tempo of the Damned in 2004. Long gap here of 12 years since the last album, but this time away seems to have been for the best, as this is tied for highest rated on Metal Storm at 8.7 with Bonded by Blood. Also their first album on Nuclear Blast Records, and with founding drummer Tom Hunting back on the kit. Love the opening hook on Scar Spangled Banner, really setting the return to actual thrash metal. Blacklist is great for a slower, more atmospheric track, incorporating some great earworms. Love that grumbly bass and chugging on Shroud of Urine, though this one also gets a little dull after a while until the solo kicks in. They also make their own attempt at basically a full-on Pantera song with the groovy Throwing Down. More solid riffing on Forward March and Culling the Herd. That track Impaler I mentioned all the way back at the debut also finally makes an appearance here with Kirk credited. Some issues that I've had with this band for a while though, making songs that often feel 2 or sometimes even like 3 minutes longer than they need to be. This is not full-on prog, so it gets super repetitive. It's the last album for a bit with Zetro on vocals due to a reported feud with Holt, but it is going to amazing for me. Then we got Shovel-Headed Kill Machine in 2005. So despite what some people have to say about Rob Duke's vocal era in a similar way as the Blaze Bayley and Tim Ripper Owens eras of Iron Maiden and Judas Priest respectively, these days I see more love for this album, and I'd include myself in that. At bare minimum, I just love how heavy this record is. Raise is a killer opener, and Death Amphetamine may also honestly be one of my all-time favorite Exodus songs.
Death Amphetamine!
Incredible solo on Karma's Messenger and fun kind of white zombie-esque groove to I Am Abomination. I also dig the title track closer. There are some weaker tracks here like Shudder to Think and the needlessly dragged out Altered Boy, but even those are pretty solid really overall. Like, I enjoy this thing mostly all the way through, so it is going to fantastic. Then there's the Atrocity Exhibition, Exhibition A in 2007. Another banger opener in the 1-2 punch of Call to Arms and Riot Act, really bringing their sound into the modern era without losing what made them great to begin with. Then love that tapping riff going into the super menacing funeral hymn. Iconoclasm has some incredible drums and guitar work. Everything just feels bigger and grander, both in production and orchestration, while also maintaining speed and aggression on tracks like Children of a Worthless God. Could once more cut this thing down a bit, but the pacing is much more effective at carrying the runtimes. Every time I feel like I'm about to get bored, they switch things up. Just a really strong outing in their discography, front to back, and then cap it off with the silly bonus track Bonded by Banjo. This one is also going to fantastic. I would say even a bit higher than the last one. Brief mention here of Let There Be Blood in 2008. This is a re-recording of Bonded by Blood, which is a ballsy move. Why not re-record and redeem a bad album instead of one that most people really enjoy? And I will say, it's not all bad, but it's just one of those situations where the original is already so beloved and the comparisons are going to be unavoidable. Personally, this just doesn't have all the same energy and rebellion either that I dig about what they did with it the first time. Just a head scratcher for me. It is going to... Okay. Then we have Exhibit B, The Human Condition, in 2010. Another very strong opener in the Ballad of Leonard and Charles, followed by the also headbang-worthy Beyond the Pale, but this feels like somewhat diminishing returns without the same grand feel of Part 1. Still feels some very strong instrumentation, but I feel like Rob's parts are pretty half-baked and forgettable. And there are even some genuine duds, like Hammer and Life with more shitty yarling and a general secondhand Metallica feel. At over an hour and 15 minutes, this just, like, it feels really unnecessarily stretched out.
The hammer is my symbol, the banner that I wave.
Class Dismissed would be decent if it was like half the length and the lyrical concept was executed a little bit more tastefully. Downfall is another one that instrumentally is fantastic with some proggier elements thrown in, and I love the atmosphere on Democide. Brendan Small of Metalocalypse fame plays a guitar solo on Devil's Teeth, and Hypocrisy's Peter Tatgren does backing vocals on The Sun Is My Destroyer. I see some rank this one higher, but I put this one at great tier. Then we got Blood In, Blood Out in 2014.
We're throwing down the gun and jumping out of bed about to make out the love. Tell you on the way.
Steve Souza making a return on vocals after a decade away, and Rob Dukes was actually involved with the writing process of the album before being ultimately fired. Black 13 is excellent, great riffs on the title track, love the D-beats and general energy of Collateral Damage and Body Harvest. Food for the Worms and Wrapped in the Arms of Rage are certified bangers, and Kirk Hammett actually makes an appearance here on the equally ripping Salt the Wound.
When I take your flesh and lacerate you, exploding all your hate.
Some of their best guitar work to date, including a seemingly endless solo on Honor Killings, and this is made even more impressive considering that Holt was also filling in with Slayer during the recording of this record. Just a cover-to-cover rager. First album since Impact Is Imminent to make Billboard 200, this time at 82. I was toying with this at Fantastic, but ultimately, I'm putting it at perfection. Like, I do think it's one of their top 3. They followed that up with Persona Non Grata in 2021.
I am the one you blacklist, the one so quickly dismissed, my being untoward.
Lots of great elements here. For one, the production is fantastic, and you can really hear everything coming through in top form on the title track. REMF is also a banger with plenty of riffs on the faster side, loving the energy in the bass. Slipping Into Madness has some fun backing vocals. It hits a particularly good sweet spot around the middle, with Prescribing Horror, the beatings will continue until morale improves, and the Years of Death and Dying.
I am the years of death and dying, a tale of gripping teeth.
On the flip side, there are also some repetitive songs, cliche lyrics, and overall the hour runtime makes it kind of a chore to get through. Clickbait, while accurate to the times, has super contrived corny lyrics, and Elitist in particular has easily the most annoying vocals on the entire album.
Ring on the bell to call the service, bang on the gong to clean the mess.
Stop it.
Kind of middle of the pack, lots of strengths, but enough weaknesses to pull it down from the upper tiers. I put this one at great. And then we have Goliath in 2026. Rob back on vocals after some more seeming drama in a bit of a reversal of what happened with Blood In, Blood Out. Big dramatic intro before really getting into the fray on 3111, and that high-octane thrashing energy continues into Hostis Humani Generis. Big riffs, crunchy bass, good times. I also enjoy Beyond the Event Horizon, 2 Minutes Hate, and the chunky start-stop guitars of Violence works, even if they feel a little bit stretched. The Dirtiest Dozen also makes for a fun closer. On the flip side, I wasn't a big fan of Goliath as a single. If you ask me, it's pretty boring in spite of the attempts at grand atmosphere with the strings. It feels like an infinitely worse version of like Triptychon.
Enormous entity who feeds on doubts and fears.
And while I dig that opening riff of the Changing Me, switching things up, this one really also feels dragged out over 6 minutes of fairly generic mid-pace chugging, and I'm not sure how I feel about the melodic chorus with Peter Tatgren again. Similar notes for Summon of the God Unknown, which at almost 8 minutes is described as an epic, but has none of the dynamics and progressive elements that would warrant such a label as it does on tracks from like Exhibit A, and they really lose me with Promise You This, which feels more corny and yarly than fun to me. It's the worst way to put a southern tinge to your music, if you ask me. They should have learned from Megadeth's mistakes. So the ups and downs continue. No shade to Rob, as he does a good job. It's more of a group effort songwriting problem, making for another more inconsistent outing. I would put this one at good tier. Alright, y'all, check out this playlist for more thrash rankings, including most of the big four. We also recently did Testament and several other big bands. Or check out this for your personal YouTube recommendation. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.